Next up, we are gonna talk about how we can design our organization to cultivate culture and scale at speed. And we do have fantastic moderators. Let me introduce you to Mike Butcher, Editor-at-Chief at Large for TechCrunch. And Mike was named one of the most influential journalists in European technology by media outlets as Wired Magazine and the Daily Telegraph. And with his guests, Åsa Lidén, the CEO of Pitch, Martin Mignot, partner at Index Venture, and Ali Niknam, the CEO of bunq, they will talk about how we can design that organization to scale very fast. Go ahead, stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Isn't it wonderful to be back in the room after a couple of years of craziness? My name is Mike Butcher. I'm the editor-at-large for TechCrunch. It's a small news outlet you may have heard of. What we're going to be doing is talking about culture and scaling at speed. For obvious reasons, startups need to move very quickly. They have investors, they have targets to reach, and the rest. But how do you maintain culture, and how do you do it quickly? And that's kind of what we're going to address. We've got a great panel here. I'm going to introduce them briefly, and we'll just basically get into it because we're relatively short on time. We've got Åsa Lidén, who is the COO of Pitch in the middle there. Martin Mignot, who's a partner at Index Ventures, right on the end there. And then we've got Ali Niknam, who is the CEO of bunq. Did I say that right?
No.
Well, how do I say it?
bunq.
bunq. Well, it depends which language you're doing it in, I suppose. Index Ventures, VC, Pitch, an amazing startup that's raised quite a lot of money and is all about new field of presentation and collaboration. And bunq is a neobank. And in fact, actually, reading very much a pioneer of the space, which is fascinating. But what we're going to talk about is the actual kind of getting into making your organization work quickly. So obviously, it's just about you get a football table, some bean bags, and then it kind of just happens naturally from there. Obviously, I'm joking. One of the really interesting things about doing it quickly is that leadership often expects people to get on, do it fast, go, 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 and then they themselves screw up, don't they? Do you ever find that yourself, Ali?
No, I'm a very disciplined person.
Great.
But I think more importantly about culture, the first thing is always to determine what the culture is that fits the company.
Yeah.
Sometimes this grows organically, which is fine. But as you then scale, I find it easier to determine, okay, these are the quintessential points of our culture. This is what makes our culture, so that you can steer on it.
How many people have you got now?
At bunq, we have 360 people.
And Åsa, how about you?
So we're 200 now, so we grew from 25 to 200 in the 3-4 years.
And let's do a quick fire round. How much of your organization is remote, and how much is your remote?
We have a number of offices. We do a mix of remote and in-office, which is part of our culture.
Okay.
And we're fully remote.
You're fully remote. And I'm going to come back to you guys because I want to unpack this. And Martin, obviously as a VC, your portfolio companies through the pandemic, they switched obviously to remote first, and now many of them are mixing up remote and hybrid. And what are some of the themes coming out that you've experienced?
By the way, we've got I think a stat on that because we have a job board that kind of collects all of the applications that are open and the positions that are open across the portfolio. And I think the number we may be corrected if it's not, but it's roughly, I think about 10% were advertised as remote pre-pandemic, and that's gone up to 70% now. So it's a pretty incredible jump over in a 2-year period, like a radical change of how companies in our portfolio operate.
Well, I know that one of your interests is trying to get governments to change policy around the world of work. And I think one of the things that you said to me was how we've got to sort of get governments aligned on things like, obviously, stock options, obviously, but also the ability to move countries as they scale. And do you have any thoughts on either at a European level or any other level about how that should be working?
Yeah, I mean, so we've been focusing on stock options as a very important, actually the single most important lever for startups to compete against larger companies to attract talent. And as we know, talent is 99% of the value of startups because it's intellectual, capital. And so we've been helping startups across Europe to design their own option plans. And also we've been lobbying for the past 4 years. We got a letter signed by 500 European entrepreneurs to lobby both their local governments to improve the stock options regime that they have in locally. And also, we just met with the European Commissioner to push at the EU level to also harmonize. And one of the ideas would be some form of European passport where you could apply the same treatment and hopefully based on the best in class, which are in the Baltics and in France, funnily enough, and apply that across the continent, wherever the employee is based.
I mean, I'd love to get into the politics of that, but unfortunately it's not the subject of the panel. But it's interesting how you say that, yes, that could actually affect the sort of the macro environment of how companies operate. At the sort of the micro environment, pitch is completely remote. Firstly, did you decide to be remote prior to the pandemic, or?
Yeah, so the company had decided to be remote prior and was already hybrid remote at that point. And so for us, it was a very easy switch to say fully remote. And so it was more or less decided at that point.
So what are some of the kind of problems that you noticed when you have tried to scale up and move quicker? What in terms of, say, did culture break, or did other things, strange things start to happen?
I mean, I've been in several scale-ups. I actually don't see much of a difference remote versus office life. I mean, the culture is really about the behavior and how you treat each other, how you take decisions, how transparent you are as a company. So there we've been very clear from the start what we value. Transparency, being an open company, and a very close relationship to leadership and a very honest conversations is super strong. So we've just made sure to continue to do that. And with that, you have to, when you grow so fast, reimagine kind of what should the org structure look like, or how do we change our process, but with still the same principles and the goal setting of keeping what is successful already. So, I mean, I honestly joined Pitch because of the remote challenge. I wanted to see how do I perform as a leader in a remote company, and it's been overly positive. Like I'm super excited about it.
Oh, well, that's a bit boring, isn't it? I was hoping you'd have some more gory answers to that. What about Ali? I know that you're quite interested in training programs. I mean, I think actually a lot of startups actually forget to train their staff, don't they?
Yes, I think so. And mind you, that bunq is not my first startup. So I've been around the block, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to learn from my mistakes in the past. And for us, because we're a very creative company on the one hand, and we're also combating these gigantic incumbents, being together is a part of our culture. And so we used to be very office-centric, wherever that office was. We tried to have hubs near our employees' hometowns and home places. But being together was a large part of our culture and a large part of the fun. We have a generally young crowd, we have drinks together, we have dinner together. I think having a cook was like our 5th or 6th employee even, because we wanted to finish our stuff, and eating pizza every day isn't very healthy, so we got a cook in. And so when the pandemic broke, although technically we're very modern and we picked up our laptops and continued at home, a lot of employees missed that together feeling, especially I don't know the situation in Brussels, but in Amsterdam, people are stuck in tiny apartments. They couldn't do much, and they felt very alone, especially those who came from abroad and were expats. So actually being in the office is a large part of who we are.
Well, but Martin, being in the office is is sort of a bit old hat now, isn't it? I know that you believe in geography over time. So you told me that time zones matter more than geography. In your portfolio, you must now have all sorts of companies of different shades who have approached culture and scaling differently, no?
Yeah, I think the point about time zone is very interesting, and we see it in the way we run our business as well. Which we've come up with that concept of the 10-hour time zone, which goes from Tel Aviv on the east side all the way to San Francisco on the west side, and that's 10-hour most of the year. And that's basically what we cover as an investment firm, and we found that's the maximum that we can cover and work with as an integrated, single team. And going back to culture, for us, the way we live, the way we operate and the way we want to help our companies by being one team, even though we have an office in London, in San Francisco, and I'm now opening one in New York with some of my partners. It's to still be able to have a free flow of information across offices in a very seamless way. That 10-hour time zone is what matters, much more than the number of kilometers, because what's interesting is that time zone also includes Africa and Latin America, for example, which were not at all on our roadmap pre-pandemic. So that's radically changed as well, how we see the world, not in terms of distances, but in terms of time.
And I'm slightly segueing into a related subject here, but this whole idea of scaling fast, because and also this post-pandemic environment where so many companies have gone either hybrid or remote, begs the question, is it not, that fully remote companies may now have a competitive advantage over hybrid companies? What do you all think? Let's start with you, Åsa.
Yeah, I think you can really focus on talent when you hire, and of course it becomes like you're not as limited as you are if you're also looking into moving people to hubs or so on, or kind of finding talent pools. I think what's interesting is also that it actually gives a bigger possibility for people who've chosen an alternative lifestyle, for example, compared to living in a big city. So we have people who live in the Alps because that's the life they want to live, and we can kind of give them a great opportunity to work at Pitch, and they have the same kind of challenge that you previously only could get if you maybe moved into a big city. And I mean, for me personally, I actually lived in Berlin when I joined Pitch, but moved back to Stockholm. And to be able to do that and keep my position as a COO at this kind of startup or incredible company is just super privileged. Work well with my family and all of that. So you don't have to, I feel like there's less sacrifice that you have to do to get a good job these days.
Maybe if I can react to that original question. What we're seeing in the portfolio is that the age of the full office every day for everyone is just gone. I mean, that just doesn't exist anymore in startup. I mean, it does exist in maybe the old world, but in startup world that doesn't exist anymore. So the choice is very much between hybrid and full remote, and there is a cursor somewhere in between. I don't think there is one that is necessarily better than the other. It's more to the original point about culture is being deliberate, and which one
what do you
it's better with your culture, and how do you organize yourself? Once you made the choice, because they are very, like if you are full remote, that has a whole host of implications in terms of how do you document, how do you deal with people who are, who never see each other, how do you share information, and so on and so forth. So it's more about being consistent between one of those two, or wherever you are between those two cursors. But the full office for everyone, that's just gone.
But this is it's such an interesting subject, isn't it? Because I remember sort of 15, 20 years ago, an entrepreneur I knew shared an apartment in San Francisco with 6 other guys. They were all guys. They left their laptops by their bed. They code for, 14, 15 hours a day, go to bed, close the laptop, go to bed, wake up, open the laptop, code. And, and that was the culture in San Francisco 20 years ago. And we've all seen those kind of, documentaries and what, satires like Silicon Valley, etc. And that's what we were told was the most efficient way to do a startup. It was fast. You sat there across from somebody else. You could say, what about X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. And they replied, there you go.
Yeah, it was back then. It was back then. But I think, what worked back then doesn't necessarily work today. 20 years ago, we didn't have the bandwidth literally on the internet that we have today. We didn't have this global infrastructure. So things change. Regardless, I think to your point, it is very important to consciously decide what kind of culture you want. Case in point, 20 years ago, the same set of people had games they would do remotely, right? But they would still get together in weekends, sit together, which there's no point at all, other than being with other human beings. So if you're a very human-centric, user-centric, creative company like bunq, I haven't found the solution to do that fully remote yet. I don't know if that's doable.
But to Åsa's point, and let's hear from you as well on this subject, because let's expand, and Martin, I want you to come in as well, is if we are basically now in a talent war, so now really it comes down to this issue of talent, because the talent is the one, the people, the human beings that you're employing are the ones who are creating the culture and are fitting into that scaling culture that you're trying to create that needs to move quickly. Does it mean they're all going to be digital nomads in Tulum?
Well, I think, talent doesn't want a singular thing. Some people like to go to a bar, some people like to stay in for a movie, some people like to go do sports. So I think talent is looking for different things. And if I look at the talent that we have, they actually appreciate being surrounded by like-minded people. They appreciate being in an environment, not all the time, but some of the time being in an environment where they feel comfortable, where they can focus on their work, where they can be creative together. Does that mean that we cannot indeed hire someone in the Alps of Switzerland? Yes. There's always, every benefit has a drawback, every drawback has a benefit. That's just the story of life.
I think the way, you asked about the digital nomad in Tulum, I think that will be definitely possible. I think how it has been up until now is being remote or digital nomad has been kind of a lifestyle choice. What we really think is that this will be in the future less of a lifestyle choice, but a professional choice. So you choose to work for a remote company for professional reasons, not only lifestyle reasons. And I think that is kind of the shift that is happening. And it can be hybrid remote, it could be remote, but I think people really look into this and make that as one of the factors. Why am I choosing to work at this place? Because with that, you will also understand, where do I perform really well? Do I perform really well when I'm working alone at home in my office and being kind of, just as you said, the routines are digital, and so we have a show and tell, which we use Pitch for every week, which is fully asynchronous. You create the presentation, you give your update, it's kind of sharing, and if that works for you, and if that is something you enjoy, that is kind of your professional choice. Or you choose hybrid remote, or being close to an office, being able to be there part-time maybe, and that will be where you feel that you strive as a person. So I think there's a super exciting future now where people will start to see this kind of lifestyle, but also professional.
But are you getting everyone together once a year, with everybody in person, or what are you doing?
Yeah, so we're actually doing it for the first time now. No, I think we're doing it for the first time now in June, so that will be the
first time?
For the first time, yeah.
That'll be interesting. Where's it going to be?
It's going to be great.
In Tulum.
I'm super excited. Not in Tulum, unfortunately, but almost.
Costa Rica.
In Portugal.
Portugal, of course.
It's the Tulum of Europe.
I'm sure it's going to be so much fun. So I have this person I met only online, for 2 years. And you know how the camera kind of distorts? And then as the countries opened up, he came over, and I saw him in person for the first time. And I thought it would be, but the guy was like a big rugby player. And I looked up at him. It was and was like twice my size. You don't see that on a camera.
I know, people are always very surprised about how tall I am. Yeah, it's our whole works.
Yeah.
Martin, your portfolio companies, they've all been through this ringer and culture change. But is it just about there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all, or do you see patterns developing in the next couple of years about how we're going to, continue to scale and continue to kind of build good culture inside companies?
Yeah, I think we are. That's what's fascinating about this whole, remote hybrid mode is that we are all. It's still very early. I mean, to the early stat, we went from 10 to 70, 80% jobs being advertised as remote in like a year's time, which is just insane. Like the office time spent in the office era lasted for almost a century. And we've totally changed that in like a year, which is so there's a lot of adaptation. I think we're just really learning. The tools are not there yet. I don't think. I don't think Zoom, for example, the whole kind of serendipitous encounters, that doesn't really work on Zoom. You don't Zoom someone just to have a quick chat and discuss. And to bounce an idea off them. Right? You have it's very structured. You have to have your calendar. So I mean, we invest in a company called Gather Town, which is a kind of a virtual water cooler world, which I think some companies are full remote, have used and are using intensively, and that's kind of replacing these serendipitous encounters. But that's still very, very early, and that's not very immersive, and it's not the same thing. And so I think we're just at the very, very beginning of creating these new best practices for this new world.
Yeah, and I know, Åsa, you even use your own product to collaborate, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, we created this presentation tool. We added recordings to it. So, for example, as I said, every Friday we do a team bulletin. Every team just adds the stuff they've been working on, just like a show and tell in the office. Because I think the challenge is to not recreate office habits, but kind of what was good in the things you did in the office.
Right.
Take kind of the output and see how can we do this in a synchronous format. So.
Well, it's a fascinating era we live in, ladies and gentlemen. I'm fascinated by the idea about cities becoming very transient now as people move in and out because we can do this this new hybrid way of working. But we ended up talking about remote working a lot, didn't we? But anyway, I'm sure that's quite a big deal these days. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Åsa Lidén from Pitch, Martin Mignot from Index Ventures, and Ali Niknam from bunq. Thank you very much, everyone. My name's Mike Butcher. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.